So you would do well to watch that video again that I had posted on the internet, um, on the blog that describes the constitutional powers. You'd also do well to review the preamble, and most of the questions are going to be stemming from that video and the preamble video. You don't have to review the how a bill becomes a law, but that stuff should be in this constitutional assessment, but it's not. And then the last thing that you should know is about Shays Rebellion and why we have why Shays Rebellion showed the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and why we needed a strong constitution. Well, first, um, Shays Rebellion shows the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation by showing that the states had more power than the federal government. And if you're going to have a set of nations as a collection functioning as a group, then you need to make sure that that government that governs over all of the states is more powerful than the state governments. That's the primary understanding of of the Constitution. It's the supreme law of the land. No other law supersedes that. We do have some arguments nowadays about whether or not state government law supersedes the federal government. But when the law was created, when the Constitution was created, that was the most important law of the land. So after Shays' Rebellion, the states felt that they needed to revise the Articles of Confederation because there was a lot of problems. One of the problems was that none of the states were forced to send any of their representatives to Congress, and you need to participate in order to have a government. The second thing is none of the states had a uniform currency, and that's a real bad problem because if you wanted to do business with each other, which is the primary purpose of the colonists separating from England, was to make money, then you needed to have a uniform currency in between all the states. And then the last thing is that each of the states decided to tax each other or impose tariffs on their goods traveling back and forth in between the states, and that slowed down business. And as a result, there was a depression, and and poor farmers were taxed in order to alleviate the money problem. And Shays' Rebellion was a result of that, and it shows the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and the need for a strong central government. The next thing that you should know is why and how the Constitution was formed. First and foremost, they had an idea of separation of powers. I mean, and that was an idea that was prevailing in the Articles of Confederation. That is to make sure that all the powers of government, which is to make laws, it's to execute laws, and it's to decide whether laws are fair or not, are not in the hands of one group of people or one person. So they separated the powers into three different branches, composed of many different people from all over the United States. The first branch is the legislative branch, and they gave a lot of text in the Constitution to the legislative branch. It has the most power according to the Constitution out of all the branches, even though they're supposed to be equal. Um, the second branch is the executive branch, which is composed of the president and the cabinet, and they execute the laws. They get the laws carried out. And then the third branch, of course, is the judicial branch, and that branch decides whether the laws are fair or not. So they separated all the powers into three different groups instead of having the power in just the hands of a couple of different people. Um, let's talk about the legislative branch. The legislative branch is composed of two different houses. The first house in the Constitution written down is the House of Representatives, and of course this is based upon population. If you have a large state, then you get more say in how the laws are created in this particular house. So, for instance, Virginia had a large population, and it would have a larger say in the House of Representatives than, say, a state like New Jersey would. Of course, there was argument over whether or not small states should have a say, and we do have a second house, and that second house is called the Senate. And in the Senate, all states are represented equally because every state sends 2 representatives called senators to be able to argue over laws and pass the laws. So senators are also very powerful. How did this come about? Roger Sherman is the one who proposed that we should combine these 2 competing ideas of equality between states and whether or not a state that has a larger population should be able to have more say in government. So he combined the 2 plans, and now we have 2 different houses, House of Representatives and the Senate. For the Senate, of course, there are 2 representatives from every state, and so that represents states equally. And senators must be 30 years old, and they serve for 6 years, so it's a long term. In the House of Representatives, the House of Representatives has 435 members, and those people are elected over and over again every 2 years. Representatives are definitely based upon states' populations, and they have to be 25 years old. So that's the legislative branch, and the legislative branch makes the laws. In the second part of the Constitution, the executive branch carries out the laws, and basically they either ratify a law that's created by the legislature, the Congress, or they veto laws, which is to cancel a law. Of course, Congress can come back with a 2/3 vote and override the executive branch's veto. The executive branch is composed of the president and his cabinet. The third branch is the judicial branch, and interestingly enough, there are no qualifications listed in the Constitution for justices. However, they're selected by, or appointed by the president, and then they are in turn, they are confirmed by a Senate hearing. So that's interesting. They serve for a lifetime, and basically, once they get close to the end of their when they feel that they're getting close to the end of their service, a lot of them usually die right afterwards. That's a very interesting little fact about senators. I think you guys already know about Anti-Federalists. They did not want the Constitution. They thought the Constitution was too powerful, and it gave too much power to a central government. And they also wanted a Bill of Rights attached to it. And then, interestingly enough, James Madison, who was the major proponent of the Constitution, oftentimes called the father of the Constitution, decided that he would actually write the Bill of Rights so that the Anti-Federalists would buy into the Constitution. I think we're almost done here. Let's talk about the preamble. The preamble is important because it provides the focus for what the Constitution is supposed to be. Again, it's going to help you if you watch that video on the preamble and on the Constitution. What's the preamble supposed to do? Well, it's supposed to connect the states. It's supposed to create justice. It's supposed to provide for defense. It's supposed to secure liberty for all the people. It's supposed to ensure tranquility in between the states. And again, it's supposed to be the focus of the entire Constitution. Lastly, our Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It does create a strong central government. It does create a balance of power and allows competing voices to be heard from all across the nation. And those competing voices will allow for the best ideas to be heard, and those ideas will become the best laws that we have. And then it also creates. It also contains John Locke's idea for self-government and for the ability for government to change over time and be a living document.